All right, let's jump back into Hell's Kitchen. Back into Daredevil.
Yeah.
This time, Daredevil, born again on Disney Plus Gate.
Right.
We've got a review of the first 2 episodes. And man, things get pretty intense pretty quickly. We're talking some shocking twists, some brutal fight scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And a whole new layer of political intrigue that's going to totally hook you.
What's really cool about this review is how it highlights the balance the show is striking between honoring that gritty feel from the Netflix series,
Yeah.
but also embracing, its new home in the MCU.
Totally. It feels like a true continuation of what we all loved.
Yeah.
Picking up where season 3 left off.
Right.
But there are definitely these hints that Daredevil's world is expanding. Like, for instance, the review even mentions callbacks to his She-Hulk appearance.
Uh-huh.
And there's even a moment where Fisk name drops Spider-Man. Can you believe that we're actually seeing these characters interact in the same universe?
It's pretty mind-blowing, yeah, when you think about it.
Yep.
And speaking of Fisk, the review drops a huge bombshell right away. Wilson Fisk is now, get this, Mayor Fisk.
What?
He's not just content with ruling the criminal underworld anymore.
Wow.
He's gone legit. Or at least he appears to be. What do you think about that? It's a pretty bold move for the show.
Oh, absolutely. It makes you wonder, what kind of puppet master is he going to be from this new position of power? The review even describes this tense civil encounter between Fisk and Matt Murdock at a diner.
Yeah.
And they say it feels like there's like a stick of dynamite sitting on the table between them. I can't even imagine the subtext and the veiled threats just flying back and forth.
I know, right? It's a testament to the acting of both Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio that they can create that level of tension with just a look.
Really?
And it totally changes the dynamic of their conflict, too.
Right.
This isn't just Daredevil versus Kingpin anymore.
Yeah.
It's Matt Murdock, the lawyer, going up against the very system that Fisk is now a part of.
And speaking of Daredevil, we got to talk about that incredible one-shot fight scene between him and Bullseye.
Yeah.
The review goes into detail about how brutal and how just visceral it is using everyday objects as weapons.
Oh, wow.
It sounds like something straight out of the comics.
Yeah, the review emphasizes how this scene is such a prime example of the show's commitment to bringing that raw energy, that gritty energy,
Yeah.
From the comics to life.
Right.
But it also points out the tragic consequences of this fight and how it pushes Murdock to a really, dark place.
Oh.
In fact, there's even this moment where Murdock breaks his no-kill rule, which we've never seen before.
Wow.
Okay.
The reviewer described it as this chilling scream.
Oh, wow.
Almost primal.
Yeah.
It seems like this Daredevil is carrying a lot more baggage than we've ever seen before.
Right.
I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about where this is all headed for him. What do you think? Is this a sign that we're going to see, like, a darker, more vengeful side of Matt Murdock?
It's definitely a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
The review even makes a point about how this might be treading familiar territory.
Oh.
We've seen Murdock grapple with the idea of giving up Daredevil before.
Yeah.
But this time, it just feels different, doesn't it? The stakes are higher, the consequences are more severe.
Right.
And he's already crossed a line that he might not be able to come back from.
That's a great point. And, there's another layer to this that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. The review mentioned that the first couple of episodes are a little bit light on memorable supporting characters compared to the Netflix series. Do you think that's going to be a problem for the show going forward?
That's a good question. While it's true that we don't have, those instant connections to characters like Wesley or Brett Mahoney, from the original series, the review does highlight a couple of new additions that seem pretty promising.
Right. Like Murdock's new love interest, who also happens to be Fisk's therapist.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a tangled web.
I know.
It makes you wonder how that dynamic is going to play out, especially given Murdock's history with Fisk. What do you think? Could this relationship create, like, a major moral dilemma for Murdock down the line?
It's definitely a recipe for some serious conflict.
Yeah.
And then there's that young journalist that the review mentions. Her family has this dark history with Fisk.
Right.
Which opens up a whole other set of potential storylines.
Okay, so we've got a power-hungry kingpin turned politician, a Daredevil struggling with his own demons, and a handful of intriguing new characters. What else could we possibly need? Oh, right, Easter eggs. And according to the review, Born Again doesn't disappoint on that front.
They mentioned spotting Bullseye's comic-accurate target rings on his costume.
Nice.
Which is the cool little detail for the fans.
Yeah.
And get this, they even caught a glimpse of a Punisher tattoo on a cop's arm.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Given the show's focus on power dynamics and standing up to bullies, I wonder how Frank Castle might react if he ever came across that cop.
Oh, man. Can you imagine that showdown? Daredevil, Kingpin, and the Punisher all in the same room?
Right.
That would be epic. Especially with Fisk mentioning Spider-Man, the possibilities for crossovers are endless. This is just the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
There's so much more to unpack here.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of unpacking, there's one more aspect of the review that I think is worth exploring. They touch upon how Born Again avoids getting into specific, like, real-world politics.
Yeah.
But its exploration of power, corruption, and the responsibility to stand up to bullies, it just feels incredibly relevant today. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think the show can effectively tackle those themes without, getting bogged down in partisan debates?
That's a really interesting point. And, it makes me think about how superhero stories, even ones as grounded as Daredevil, can almost act as mirrors to society.
Yeah.
They allow us to explore these really complex issues, but in a safe space to kind of examine the gray areas of morality.
Yeah.
And to ask ourselves what we would do in similar situations.
Exactly. It's about finding those universal truths within these, fantastical narratives. And that brings us to a pivotal question that the review raises. Does revisiting Murdock's internal struggle with giving up Daredevil, does that feel repetitive? Or can the show find new depth in exploring this theme again?
I think that's something we'll have to wait and see. But based on what we've discussed so far, it seems like Born Again is setting the stage for a much darker and more complex exploration of Matt Murdock's journey.
Agreed. And, while the review didn't go into much detail about Foggy Nelson's role in these first two episodes, they did hint at a pretty tragic fate for him.
Oh, no.
It makes you wonder if that loss could be like a major catalyst for Murdock's, descent into a darker path.
That's a great point. Foggy's always been Murdock's moral compass, his voice of reason.
Yeah.
Losing him could definitely have a profound impact on Murdock's psyche.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Foggy's absence will make Murdock more vulnerable to Fisk's manipulations? Or will it fuel his determination to bring Fisk down, even if it means crossing lines he never thought he would?
Those are some really thought-provoking questions.
Yeah.
And I think they speak to the larger theme of consequence that seems to be running through these first two episodes. Every action has a reaction. And Murdock is starting to realize that his choices have this ripple effect that extends far beyond his own life.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Daredevil such a compelling character.
Yeah.
He's not just a superhero fighting crime. He's a man wrestling with his own demons, trying to find that balance between his need for justice and his desire to, hold on to his humanity.
Well, I don't know about you, but this deep dive has me on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to see how the rest of this season unfolds.
Me neither. And, while we've covered a lot of ground already, there's still so much more to explore. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into some of the more nuanced aspects of the review, like the potential for future MCU crossovers.
Ooh.
The show's commentary on the criminal justice system.
Okay.
And the moral implications of Daredevil's actions.
Sounds like a plan. Until then, keep those horns sharp, Daredevil fans. We'll be back soon to delve even deeper into the world of Born Again.
Absolutely. So picking up where we left off, the review also dives into how Daredevil, Born Again, handles its political themes. It's interesting because while the show doesn't explicitly reference any real-world events, it still manages to tap into some very real anxieties about power, corruption, and the abuse of authority.
It's almost like they've created this heightened reality that allows them to explore those themes in like a more symbolic way.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Fisk is mayor.
Right.
That's not just about one man's ambition. It's a reflection of how those in power can manipulate the system to serve their own interests. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. And the review points out how the show doesn't shy away from showing the really devastating consequences of that kind of corruption. It's not just about political maneuvering. It's about how those actions impact real people's lives.
Right, like that shocking scene the reviewer described where Murdock breaks his no-kill rule.
Right.
That's not just a plot twist. It's a statement about how far someone can be pushed when they're up against a system that seems rigged against them.
And it raises a really fascinating question, too.
Yeah.
What happens when the lines between good and evil become blurred?
Right.
Can you still be a hero when you're forced to make compromises, to do things that go against your own moral code?
That's something I think a lot of us grapple with in our own lives, right?
Yeah.
Figuring out where those boundaries are.
Yeah.
And what we're willing to do to fight for what we believe in.
Exactly. And Daredevil, Born Again, seems to be exploring that gray area in a really compelling way.
Yeah.
But, it's not just about the big overarching themes.
Yeah.
The review also delves into some of the smaller details that make this show so fascinating.
Like the Easter eggs.
Yes.
I know we touched on this briefly before.
Yeah.
But the review mentions a few more that I think are worth highlighting.
Okay.
For instance, they spotted a copy of the Divine Comedy on Murdock's desk. That's a pretty subtle nod to his Catholic upbringing.
Oh, wow.
And the constant battle between good and evil that he faces.
And there's a moment where Murdock is walking through a crowd, and you can hear a street preacher quoting a line from the book of Job. Again, it's a very subtle detail.
Wow.
But it speaks volumes about Murdock's state of mind, his sense of isolation and despair.
Those little touches are what make the show feel so layered and thought-provoking. It's like they're rewarding the viewers who are paying attention, who are willing to dig a little deeper beneath the surface.
Absolutely. And that brings me to another point the review raises, the potential for future MCU crossovers.
Oh, yeah.
With Fisk mentioning Spider-Man and Daredevil's recent appearance in She-Hulk,
right.
It seems like the groundwork is being laid for some pretty epic team-ups down the line.
I'm trying to imagine a Daredevil and Spider-Man team up right now, and it's just too cool to even contemplate.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be bouncing off the walls, literally and figuratively. But it also makes you wonder how Daredevil's gritty, street-level world is going to mesh with the more fantastical elements of the MCU.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the review hints at the possibility that Daredevil, Born Again, could be a bridge between those two worlds.
Right.
A way to introduce a darker, more grounded tone to the MCU without sacrificing the humor and the spectacle that fans have come to expect.
That would be amazing, to see Daredevil's world expand, but without losing the essence of what made the original series so special.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see how they handle that balance. But, even if we never see Daredevil team up with the Avengers or battle interdimensional beings, the show is already doing something incredibly important.
What's that?
It's reminding us that superhero stories don't have to be about saving the universe or defeating all-powerful villains. Sometimes the most heroic acts are the ones that take place in the shadows, the quiet acts of defiance against injustice, the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it seems like all hope is lost.
And that's something that resonates with everyone, regardless of whether you're a diehard comic book fan or just someone who appreciates a good story about fighting for what you believe in.
Exactly. And I think Daredevil, Born Again, is proving that those kinds of stories can be just as thrilling, just as emotionally powerful, and just as relevant as any big-budget blockbuster.
One thing the review didn't touch on too much was the new supporting cast. We briefly discussed Murdock's new love interest and the journalist with ties to Fisk.
Right.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on their potential impact on the show.
It's definitely an area I'm excited to see explored further. The review hinted at some pretty intriguing possibilities, particularly with Murdock's love interest being Fisk's therapist.
Right.
That dynamic alone has the potential to create some incredibly tense and morally complex situations.
It's almost like a Shakespearean tragedy waiting to happen. And the journalist, with her family's history with Fisk, she could be a catalyst for uncovering some really dark secrets about Fisk's past. Secrets that could bring his entire empire crumbling down.
Right. I'm also curious to see how these new characters will challenge Murdock's perspective. Will they push him further down a dark path?
Right.
Or will they help him find a way to reclaim his sense of justice and hope?
Those are some really thought-provoking questions.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the idea that Daredevil Born Again is not just a continuation of the Netflix series.
Right.
It's an evolution.
Yeah.
It's taking these characters we know and love and putting them through the ringer.
Forcing them to confront their pasts, their demons, and their own definitions of what it means to be a hero.
And that's what makes this show so captivating. It's not just about the action or the spectacle. It's about the characters, their struggles, and their journeys of self-discovery.
Well, I don't know about you, but this deep dive has left me with a lot to ponder.
Me too.
I'm eager to see how these new characters develop, how the show continues to explore its political themes, and whether or not we'll get those epic MCU crossovers that we've been dreaming of.
Me too. And while we've dissected the review pretty thoroughly,
Yeah.
there's one more aspect I think is worth highlighting before we move on. The reviewer mentioned that Daredevil, Born Again, doesn't shy away from depicting the physical and emotional toll that violence takes on its characters.
You're right. They specifically mentioned the brutal fight scenes, but also the lingering impact of trauma, both on Murdock and on the people around him. And I think that's something that's often overlooked in superhero stories. We see the fights, the explosions, the grand displays of power, but we rarely get a glimpse into the lasting consequences of those battles.
It's like the show is saying, yes, there's a certain thrill to seeing Daredevil take down a room full of bad guys, but let's not forget that every punch, every kick, every broken bone has a ripple effect.
Exactly. And that's what makes Daredevil, Born Again, so much more than just a superhero show.
Right.
It's a show about the human cost of violence, the burdens we carry, and the scars that never fully heal.
And I think that's a message that resonates with everyone.
Yeah.
Whether you're a comic book fan or not, we all experience pain, loss, and trauma in our own lives.
Right.
And seeing those themes explored in a show like this,
with
such raw honesty and emotional depth, it's both cathartic and challenging.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's still hope. There's still a reason to fight, to keep moving forward, to believe that things can get better.
Well said. So, to our listeners, as you delve into Daredevil, Born Again, keep this in mind. It's not just about the action or the spectacle.
Right.
It's about the characters, their journeys, and the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome even the most daunting obstacles.
I think we've given our listener plenty to chew on for now.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the final part of our deep dive?
Let's do it. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on the remaining aspects of the review, particularly the show's exploration of redemption and the possibility of second chances. As we wrap up our deep dive into this review of Daredevil, again, I keep coming back to this idea of duality that seems to be kind of woven throughout the show. We've got Matt Murdock battling his inner demons while also facing off against these external threats like Kingpin. And then we've got Fisk trying to present this image of legitimacy as mayor, but still operating in the shadows of the criminal underworld. And then there's this constant push and pull between hope and despair, between the desire for justice and accepting the harsh realities of the world.
It's a fascinating observation.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the complexity of the characters and the world that they inhabit. The review even touches upon how the show visually represents this duality.
Okay.
Using light and shadow to create a sense of moral ambiguity. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think the visuals effectively enhance the themes this show is exploring?
Absolutely. I mean, think about the iconic Daredevil costume. The way it blends darkness and light. It's almost like a symbol of his internal struggle. And the way the show uses shadows to obscure faces, to create a sense of mystery and uncertainty. It's like we're constantly being reminded that things are not always as they seem.
And that ties into another theme the review highlights.
Okay.
The idea of redemption. Can someone like Wilson Fisk truly change? Or is he forever bound to his past sins? Can Matt Murdock find a way to reconcile his violent actions with his desire to be a force for good? These are questions that have haunted these characters for decades in the comics.
And
it seems like Born Again is ready to tackle them head on.
It's almost like the show is asking us to examine our own capacity for forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others. Can we truly move on from past traumas, or are we always going to be haunted by the ghosts of our mistakes?
Those are some heavy questions, and I think it's a testament to the show's ambition, that it's willing to engage with them. But, amidst all the darkness and moral ambiguity, there's also this glimmer of hope that kind of shines through. The review specifically mentions a scene where Murdock, despite everything he's been through, still reaches out to help someone in need. It's a small act of kindness, but it speaks volumes about his enduring compassion and his belief in the, the inherent good of humanity.
It's like even in the darkest corners of Hell's Kitchen, there's still that spark of light that refuses to be extinguished. And that brings us to a question that's been on my mind since we started this whole deep dive.
Okay.
What does it all mean?
Right.
What is Daredevil? Born Again ultimately trying to say about the world we live in, about our own struggles with justice, morality, and the fight for what's right?
That's a question that each viewer will likely answer in their own way.
Right.
But I think the show is offering us a glimpse into the complexities of the human experience.
Yeah.
Reminding us that there are no easy answers.
Yeah.
No, like, clear-cut heroes and villains.
Right.
It's about recognizing the shades of gray in ourselves.
Yeah.
And in others.
Yeah.
About acknowledging our own capacity for both good and evil.
And it's about finding the strength to keep fighting, even when the odds seem insurmountable.
Yeah.
Even when the world feels like it's crumbling around us. Because as Daredevil has taught us time and time again, hope can be found in the most unexpected places. And even the smallest acts of courage can make a difference.
Beautifully said. So to our listener, as you embark on your own journey into the world of Daredevil, Born Again,
yeah,
remember this: embrace the duality, question the easy answers, and never lose sight of the hope that flickers even in the darkest of nights.
And don't forget, this is just the beginning.
Right.
There are many more episodes to explore, more twists and turns to unravel, and more insights to glean from the Man Without Fear's return to the screen.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep those horns sharp.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Be sure to check out the next episode where we'll tackle an entirely new topic. We'll see